The next Unknown Pleasures screening is two films on the 24th of September, and those films are The Kidnappers and On. And it's my great pleasure to be speaking to the filmmakers responsible and programmers responsible for those two films, Colin Hodson and Graham Osborne. Welcome to Movie Metropolis.
Hi, Peter.
Thanks so much, Peter.
Yeah.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, good to talk to you both. Now, let's talk about these two films because they are quite intriguing in many respects. Let's start with, I think, On is the older film which has been restored. What was the concept behind On and the whole drug culture that is part of the film?
Well, a couple of years earlier, I'd made another improvised feature, and I guess I just drew from my life and the people around me. It was very kind of naturalistic, and then with On, I guess I kind of upped the melodrama a little bit. So it still remained an improvised film with the structure, but I added things like a death and stuff that hasn't happened. So I was just experimenting with maybe how far I could go with something like that. But I think it still unfolds in a kind of understated way, which I quite like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it largely improvised or was it scripted?
No, it's all improvised. So I'd have a structure and an outline. And so with each scene, I'd say this is the goal for each actor is to achieve this and that scene. So they have a destination. And they weren't, well, one person was an actor, others had sometimes acted or were musicians. And as we did more and more takes, they ended up basically creating the script themselves and always hitting the same mark. So that's an interesting process from the improvisation is once you start doing more takes, you're actually kind of writing a script. And then I was thinking, Helena, who plays Julie, background was a musician, and that's why she could, once she did it a few times, she was always really consistent. But I think having the structure is really important. Otherwise, you could just go anywhere. So yeah, each scene had a structure, and I think I stuck pretty closely to that.
Okay.
We dropped one scene, yeah. That just didn't work.
How interesting. How did you find your actors?
I think Helena was just someone I'd see around at openings, and I thought she was really interesting. Greg King, who is a filmmaker himself and an actor, the producer of the movie, Campbell Walker, knew him in Auckland, and I was in Wellington, and just said you should get him in a movie. So we called him up, and he came down. And George was just another local guy who's also a filmmaker, underground filmmaker. So apart from Helena, the other main characters are all filmmakers in their own rights, which is, I think, quite interesting.
Uh-huh. And why did you call it On?
It was originally the film when I first made it was called Off.
Ah.
And I don't remember how that name came about, but then as I was restoring the print like a couple of days ago, I realized Helena says, "Can you get me off?" So maybe it came from that. But I was never quite happy with that version of Off. And so a few years later, I re-edited it and called it On. So it's a recut, and I think it's much better for it too.
Okay. And I've had a look at it, the restored version. It's great that you're able to digitally restore it.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't have seen the restored version because I only just got the file back from the New Zealand Film Archive.
Ah.
But it's just a lot. It looks a lot better. It's not letterbox and so I'm even changed a couple of cuts in the restoration, so yeah. But the cut that was called on, I didn't like re-edit it, I just cut down. I just tightened up the whole thing, but that was worth it.
Okay, well done. Now let's talk. Yep, go on.
Oh no, I just said thanks.
Yeah. Okay, now let's talk about The Kidnappers, which is such an edgy film about two people who kidnap a child. Tell me about the origins of that film.
Yeah. So the Kidnappers script was written by a friend of mine, Paul Frees. And yeah, he originally planned to come out to Australia and shoot the film himself using his wife, Billy Frees, who's Australian, and their son, and me as the cast. But Paul couldn't make it, and then we decided to go ahead and make the film ourselves. So it was quite a collaborative kind of effort with me and Billy driving around the Blue Mountains in a car with a camera and just trying to find things that worked. Or we used the script as like a narrative outline, but we improvised everything. So
very much the
yeah.
same as we did with our one. It's a strange coincidence.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I had met Colin in New York. I lived there for many years, and yeah, we came away and sort of did some similar things, featuring some similar characters that we'd both run into in New York. Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, because when I reconnected with you, Graham, I realized you'd actually made a different movie about the very same people that are in On, without even knowing.
Yeah.
It's these same relationships of the older man and the younger woman and stuff. It was quite uncanny when I saw you'd made that movie.
Yeah, I had the same reaction. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, it's odd.
Yeah.
In that gestational period where we weren't in contact at all, I didn't even know if you were alive, say.
Same, yeah.
Our film taste and knowledge, I guess, developed very much along the same lines. We were looking at Chantal Ackerman and some of the East Asian filmmakers and stuff. It was quite weird how we'd gone the same path without knowing that.
Yeah, yeah. Fascinating.
It is. So for The Kidnappers, it's fairly much guerrilla filmmaking, and also largely improvised, as you say. How easy was it to control the child?
That was yeah, one of the big challenges, because Billy was, splitting her time acting the role of Rachel, and when Charlie had to be in scenes, she was also taking care of him, and so switching between the two roles. One of the approaches we used was to try to get Charlie to join in with the game that the adults were playing in the front seat, and he did that really well. You can hear him crying in the film, but that's something we recorded at a different time one night when he was protesting that he didn't think it was time for his bath. So yeah, and that was a very effective kind of sound that we used later on.
It's really haunting, that crying.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Film.
Yeah, it was very real, his bath trauma. Yeah, at the time. I mean, he just thought it was too early. He wanted to stay up.
Okay.
So no children are harmed in the making of this film?
No, hopefully not. He's just a fine young man now.
Cool.
Now, the two films are screening at Unknown Pleasures in September, later in September. But have the two films been screened elsewhere?
On has screened the version called Aust screened at the New Zealand Film Festival, and it's the version called On has played in Amsterdam. So this will be Australian premiere.
Ah.
What's the situation for you, Graham?
Yeah, The Kidnappers has never been shown anywhere, and yeah, this is the first time anything I've made has been shown, so it's going to be quite a fun experience to see it on a large screen with good sound. Yeah.
Cool.
Will you both be at the screening on September 24th?
Yeah.
We
Hopefully so.
yeah, you'll come down, Graham, and I think we're going to have a moderated Q&A, moderated to be announced. But yeah, that should be good.
Okay.
Graham, so you're Ethan's lawyer. You didn't direct that, but you were in it, so that's screened in other places, yeah.
Oh yeah, that was screened in New York. That's right, in a small film festival. Yeah, yeah, and that sort of features the same character that appears in the lawyer character, that quite intense character that we both came across in New York. He's featured in that too. I mean, a fictionalized kind of scenario, but definitely that same character.
I was just thinking another interesting thing I thought is that in that parallel filmmaking thing we did, we've both made ourselves the central actor. Often it's because I'm always available, and I think you're always available.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's much easier to do it that way in the end. Despite kind of a reluctance to do it, it's so much easier to not. Yeah, I mean, we had 2 actors, no crew on the Kidnappers. It's it's certainly a uncomplicated sort of approach, I guess. Yeah.
Does that politically lend itself to a way of filmmaking that's really against the normal conventions of filmmaking, which I think is quite interesting? Like,
yeah,
we have a different infrastructure to make fictional content.
Yeah, more an approach like you can do anything, and you don't really need permits or grants. You can have a camera and try to find something you like, and images that resonate. Yeah, more adventurous that way, I think, and sort of challenging, maybe.
I was looking at your one last night, Graham, and I was thinking how there's some really nice observational moments where you just have the camera looking at people in the I guess in the Blue Mountains.
Yeah, which
it's fascinating just seeing the way people move, or they wriggle their fingers, or
I felt the same looking at your street scenes in Melbourne with things like the dealers. It's the people on the street, the interactions. Yeah.
In Wellington, you mean, where we shot it? Yeah.
Wellington, sorry. Yeah.
So this is obviously as a New Zealand-made film being shot here, but right now I'm making a feature film with we've shot it a pinhole lens, and it follows the same methodology of improvisation and around a structure. So I guess I could make a claim to be a Melbourne filmmaker, hence being in Bulma Solis' screenings.
I was wondering how much financial and production support were behind both of the films, especially from New Zealand, which invests in films quite well. How much support was there?
With Off, we got $20,000, which is amazing. So I could actually pay the actors and pay for the sound mix and the online
Ah,
the editing myself. But the body that funded us was pretty much dissolved a few years later,
yeah.
which was an arts body. And so all that's left in New Zealand now is a film commission who are only interested in making very commercial products. So I'd never get a look in with funding from them now with that type of movie, which is sad. And my first movie I made with no money, and this one I'm making now, we've had no funding really. So it's the impulse to make the films is stronger than the ability to fund them. But one still tries to do it. It's a strange drive, I guess. I'd love to get funding for, say, for the new one, but it's hard. So
Yeah.
but it would make a huge difference to the quality, especially say the sound and stuff, which would help the movies, you know.
Yep. It's so interesting making films like this, which are beyond the, as you say, the commercial or the mainstream, and getting them exhibited is always a real issue. And it's great that it's screening at Unknown Pleasures. But I wonder if your feature film will perhaps tap into something a bit more commercial.
The upcoming one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely like to say it would be great if Melbourne Film Fest picked it up. I'll try them next year. I hope that because it's shot with a pinhole image, it's got a kind of unique selling point, and I think it looks really interesting. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's still a narrative film, but you're moving away from that ultra high definition thing that a lot of people are going for. Although people are going back to 16mm lately to get a kind of a slightly degraded image. So it's, yeah, interesting.
Okay. Now, with the Kidnappers and with On, what was the editing process like? Because as you've said, with On, it's been somewhat restored, but editing, especially improvised films, can be quite challenging.
Yeah, I edited The Kidnappers on using iMovie before I really learned how to use the program, I guess. I kind of figured it out along the way a little. And then I got to the edit that exists now, and I kind of lost a lot of the original files in a computer crash. So, yeah. And we're left with a 34-minute edit, which contains some kind of rough audio type transitions, but I think it's okay. Yeah. But it was a great kind of learning experience. We filmed a lot, and I just tried to find images that worked with music, and kind of looking for a kind of hallucinatory, dreamlike imagery that maybe suggested the point of view of someone high on, say, heroin or other opiates. Yeah, that's kind of what I was looking for, especially in the beginning, to kind of ease into the narrative. Yeah.
And within that framework of what you're trying to achieve, there's, to me, really very real intimacies and relational moments that kind of like the gold of it. Like you have a big story and it's pretty melodramatic, but then you have these little intimate gestures between you and Billy that I think are that's why I like watching it.
Yeah, interesting.
And I think that happened in On as well.
Yeah.
It's just very interesting interpersonal interactions, and I like watching to see how people navigate each other.
Yeah, Yeah.
I was
Yeah,
going to,
Billy's fascinating to watch, I think.
yeah, that I don't know if I can spoil the film. She shuts the door on you. It's so funny. It's
Oh yeah,
wonderful.
yeah, yeah. We just had the camera running. That happened to happen. The timing was good. Yeah.
Yeah. With my editing process, I'd actually been working for a documentary company. So I was used to watching, I was digitizing lots and lots of footage where the camera would just roll. And so I think I learned to edit this kind of observational type stuff from having the documentary background, where you look for the story and what the camera happens to have shot. But in a documentary, you don't always know what's going to happen as they're filming. So I think that helped me become able to edit, improvise things, which can sometimes go off course, but you know where to find the bits to bring it back on course. And with Campbell's very mobile camera, I could do a lot of cuts because he had reframed so often. It looked like maybe I had a second camera or something, but it's just his mobile camera that allowed me to make cuts that weren't always jump cuts. Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, and with On, I was intrigued to watch the whole drug experience, etc., and the associated ramifications. I suppose health and safety was at the fore.
Yeah, there weren't any drugs used in the making of the movie, apart from coffee and feed. So all of that was, I guess you could say, mimed or something.
The
I don't think
injections
any of
looked
us. Pardon?
pretty good. The injections looked pretty realistic.
Mm,
Yeah.
I thought very effective.
yep.
This is water.
Yeah.
When we made that movie, and to this day, I don't think any of us are interested in going down that road again. So I'm not an advocate for it. But it's interesting to think about why and what sort of people end up doing those things. Yeah.
Mm.
Yep. So Colin and Graham, were there any particular films or filmmakers that may have influenced your approach to the Kidnappers and On?
So I guess at the time, my favorite filmmakers would have been the things I was watching was kind of European masters like Robert Bresson and Godard and Tarkovsky, a kind of a slow-paced kind of approach. Yeah, so that sort of thing, I loved those films. A lot of that European style, Polanski and also Kubrick, that kind of thing. I mean, this is completely at the other, end of the spectrum, kind of. But those were kind of things that I was watching at the time, and I guess influenced by.
Mm-hmm.
And coincidentally,
Yeah.
at that time, say that the Dogma films had come out, and I didn't know about Dogma, but I realized we'd follow the same aesthetic, which is kind of get the camera rolling and don't be too concerned with technical things,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
or the quality itself becomes a type of signature look and feel too. I often take a lot of my models from sort of, I guess, alternative music, which again, you're not maybe looking at high fidelity, but interesting ideas.
Yeah, like a punk rock kind of
Yeah.
do-it-yourself aesthetic, kind of. Yeah. You
And
don't
it
need
takes,
permission.
yeah.
Mm.
I was
Yeah.
also interested in those Asian, like I was saying, Simon Liang, or now I didn't know about him then, Hong Sang-soo. Pitchupong were Sethakol were big influences on me. I don't know if that comes into the movie, but I am interested in that kind of filmmaking. It's pretty far from a lot of English language film. Like, you know, we're looking at French filmmakers or non-English ones. It's interesting that that's the case. Non-English speaking.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, look, congratulations on your films. They are really interesting to watch, and I think the audience on the 24th of September, as part of Unknown Pleasures, will appreciate seeing The Kidnappers and On, especially as they are rarely seen. So we've been speaking to Colin Hodson and Graham Osborne for their films The Kidnappers and On. Thank you so much, both of you, for talking with me.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks so much, Peter.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye. All the best.